Nestled along the banks of the Mississippi River, the town of Muscatine in Iowa is a world away from China, both geographically and culturally. But it's a special place for Chinese President Xi Jinping and also the heartland for China-US relations. Visiting in 1985 as part of an agricultural delegation, Xi stayed with a local family in his unassuming home at 2911 Bonnie Drive. And now the house is open to the public, dubbed as the Sino-US Friendship House. As Vice President, Xi returned to Iowa in 2012 to meet some of his old friends. He gave his Iowa hosts a banner as a present, but the biggest gift they received from Xi, and the lasting present he received from them in turn, is friendship.
Well, there are no others who would remember that visit better than the Dvorchaks, which Chinese President Xi Jinping, then a young official from China, stayed with during his first trip to the U.S. Gary Dvorchak's parents, Tom and Eleanor, were the ones who hosted the young Chinese official. Gary now is running his own business between the U.S. and China. He told me in a World Insider exclusive interview that the Chinese president even stayed in his room when Gary was living in school. He jokingly said that the room had the typical decoration for an American kid.
There's been a lot of press about it and how it was decorated, and in fact there were Star Trek and Star Wars toys and pictures and things like that. I had left for university and my mother, I think, turned the room into a little bit of a museum of my childhood. It was certainly decorated like the room of a typical American child and then teenager. We had wallpaper that was football players, Star Trek, Star Wars toys, things like that. So we can imagine a little bit of Xi Jinping's surprise to be put into a room that was a little bit more childlike than you might expect. Yeah. But I think that also gave the flavor of the typical American life and lifestyle, which is part of what they were there to learn about.
Wow, it's great. It's great. And now when you look back, you're thinking, that room has really becoming historical.
Well, it is, and it's really surprised me. I was at the house about a year ago because now it's been turned into a museum. Anyone that visits the house and visits Muscatine is still going to get that flavor of what they experienced then, because the town is the same size. The house generally looks the same, and the most important thing, the hospitality and welcoming nature of the people, is really the same or even more so now after everything we've experienced.
I heard, Gary, that when Chinese President Xi Jinping as a local official visited Iowa, he was there to go to visit some farms, and he was there also to attend a birthday party. How was he articulating his first experience in America with your parents then, who is the host of him in the U.S.?
In 1985, the relationship between the U.S. and China was still in its infancy of an opening up. And there were really no Chinese visitors coming to the United States at that time. And certainly in a little town like Muscatine, which is very remote, it's a 3-hour drive from Chicago, which is, in the middle of the country, the fact that we had Chinese visitors made the front page of the local newspaper. And again, they weren't famous. This was just a group of regular people. So this is a very uncommon occurrence at that time. And yet the hospitality and how they were welcomed to everyday things like that, they organized a lot of different events for them. They took them on a boat ride in the Mississippi River. Oh. They had a barbecue where they got to have kind of normal American food. All these things were things that the president, when we had met him a couple of years ago, reflected on. And in fact, I'll tell you a story. One of his most fond memories, and it was very telling, is he was with one of the hosts, Sarah Landy, at her house, and they needed to get some food from a neighbor to prepare a meal. And they just walked over to the neighbor's house. They knew where the key was. They let themselves in, got the food they needed, and went back. And everyone trusted each other. It was a small community, and it was warm. And that was the first story that he related to us. He remembered the trust and the warmth amongst the people themselves, and then that was extended to him and the rest of the delegation.
It's just amazing how much the first impression would have for a person's understanding of a country. Having said that, though, Gary, I heard President Xi at the time, as a young official, he presented your parents, because he was staying in your house, a bottle of Chinese wine. And also, when he left your house, your parents give a farewell gift to him, popcorn. So what about those two presents? Did your parents consume that bottle of Chinese wine? And what about the inspiration for giving popcorn as a giveaway present? Tell us more about that.
Well, that's exactly true. And of course, the gifts that you give are an important part of visiting, obviously, both for the Chinese and really for Americans too. Now, I'll tell you, and I've had a fair amount of baijiu myself since I moved to China, it's an acquired taste for non-Chinese. So, my parents, the initial reaction on drinking it was, it was good. It was obviously a high quality bottle, but it's something you have to get used to. So they told me they drank it. So it was actually a very meaningful gift. But as you know, I mean, I'm sure you've drank some baijiu. It takes a little while to get used to the taste.
Just to think about the impact of the Chinese wine for a little town in Iowa in the United States. It's amazing. What about that popcorn?
Well, so my parents' thinking, of course, was you want to give something native and local to have the gift be more meaningful. In Iowa, native and local, the products are corn and hogs. And giving a hog is not going to work, so that left corn, and so obviously popcorn is easy to transport and obviously delicious once you cook it. So it was really the sense of bringing back something that was local and native to Iowa that would be memorable in that way.
Well, Gary, people-to-people relations is extremely important, and yet you've heard over the past few months since the presidential election in the U.S. some different words being used between China and the United States. Some describe China as the threat, currency manipulator, put on trade tariffs against China, punishing American businesses, doing trade with China, and even talk about China as an enemy. So what would all of this mean? I mean, to the state of Iowa, to your family, when you heard these words, and to you as a business person going between the two countries?
Trump's a businessman, right? And he wants to get a better deal. So a lot of what you're seeing, my interpretation, is it's negotiating and really more preparing for negotiating. So there'll be a lot of tough talk on both sides. Everyone's going to stake out their position, but at the end, we're going to come together. The terms of trade will change. In the end, I think we're going to be better off, both in terms of economics and other things. But it's a process that we have to go through. And right now we're seeing the tougher part of the process.
One thing that we need to see what's going to happen is who is going to be the U.S. ambassador to China. At this point, the governor of Iowa, the state that you're originally from, Mr. Branstad, now is being nominated by President-elect Trump. But of course, Congress has to confirm.
Well, Branstad is an excellent pick for the ambassadorship. And I would be shocked if he wasn't confirmed by the Senate. He's probably the most uncontroversial selection that's been made so far in terms of the administration and what they're doing. He is, obviously he has the oldest relationship of everyone with Xi Jinping and with China in general, because he went to China in 1984 to start trade relations for Iowa, to open up agricultural trade. And he was the one that invited a delegation to come to Iowa in 1985, which was the one that was led by Xi Jinping. So on the one hand, I think he can smooth things out because of the personal relationship. On the other hand, I think he's in a different space than he was before in terms of his ability to move, because again, he's representing the whole United States.
If the president-elect, Mr. Trump, pick up the phone and ask you, so Gary, you met the Chinese president, your family did, any advice for me before I comes into the office? What would you say?
Personal understanding is very important, and it's very genuine. And I think, and that's what I would tell President-elect Trump, is that when President Xi talks about his experiences with America, that isn't just political talk. I mean, there's a really genuine personal feeling there that he had from that experience over 30 years ago.
Gary Dvorchaks, an American businessman doing his business in China, but at the same time whose family has a really beautiful story with the president of China, Mr. Xi Jinping. Thank you so much for being with us, Gary Dvorchaks. Thank you.